Hello everyone and welcome to MIAB's presentation on state-backed indemnity, preparing for the 1st of April. My name is Tristan Lennox-Gentle and I'm one of the directors here at MIAB. And my job today is to take you through a very extensive agenda which we'll try and cover off in around 15 or 20 minutes as a whistle-stop tour of what's likely to happen beyond April the 1st, 2019, and how clinicians are going to be affected by the impact of the rolling out of the state-backed indemnity scheme. So as you can see, fair amount to get through, so without further ado, let's look at the clock ticking, the scheme being set to launch on the 1st of April. And of course, this is going to impact GPs and clinicians alike in primary care, and hopefully everybody's looking forward to the unveiling of that state-backed indemnity scheme. Ironically, however, the cynicism that the scheme's been met with would have many believe that this is a well-planned government April Fool, 18 months in the making, but in reality, the indemnity solution is something the medical profession and the BMA have demanded for many, many years. This has, in part, been driven by the increasingly prohibitive Defence Organisation membership costs, and it's been compounded by the adjustment to the discount rate and aimed at improving staff attrition. So the state-backed scheme is intended to be almost an overarching wraparound solution to a range of problems that are faced at the moment by primary care. Of course, it also might help in achieving the Department of Health targets as set out in the 5-year forward view, but it would be remiss of me to suggest this was ever a consideration for its conception. The scheme has been highly publicised as well. We've seen it in the medical press, such as Pulse and GP Online, and also through the blogs and tweets of major indemnity providers. Some of the key detail was released on the NHS resolution website at the end of February as well, and that highlighted the scope of cover for clinicians and for entities, what's covered, but most importantly, what isn't. So if we take a look at what isn't covered under the state-backed scheme, it's quite telling, and it does expose clinicians in some areas. For example, knowing that the state-backed scheme won't cover Good Samaritan's Acts is quite a key piece of information there, because any litigation that follows for any claims arising from Good Samaritan's Acts will fall outside of the scope of state-backed indemnity cover. We also know that fitness to practice, or more specifically, investigations by the GMC or any other regulatory body, will be excluded. And this includes disciplinary and investigatory hearings, performers list disputes, and any associated legal assistance that you might require to defend yourself. Also outside of the scope of cover is attendance at coroner's courts or any other specialist litigation and proceedings, such as an expert witness. Finally, we know that as the scheme will be administered by NHS resolution and mirror the structure of the current CNST indemnity scheme in secondary care, that there will be no access to medico-legal telephone support. For many GPs, this assistance has been a stalwart of indemnity insurance and via defence organisations, and it won't be available under the state-backed scheme. The most suitable way to approach state-backed indemnity is to consider it as clinical negligence only cover for NHS work. Everything else will remain the responsibility of the practice or the clinician themselves to arrange. So the general expectation was that in order to pay for state-backed indemnity, the value of a practice's contract would be top sliced, and that would give the practice an indemnity solution but also a lower value contract for their services. As it transpires, and according to the latest BMA report into investment and evolution for the next 5 years in the NHS, contract values are actually going to increase by 1.4% in real terms. So the cost of indemnity will be top sliced, but the value of the underlying contract will be increased proportionally to the value, effectively creating a money exchange arrangement for practices. In the same report, the BMA draw reference to the need for practices to take out separate indemnity with defence organisations to cover professional practice, additional advisory services and private work. There is a general acceptance by all stakeholders that the indemnity proposed by the government will need some bolstering to align with what GPs and other allied healthcare professionals have come to expect from their current arrangements. But I guess the key question here is it right to suggest that medical defence organisations are the only proponents of this type of cover? The medical indemnity market for GPs has historically been reserved for the big three defence organisations. I'm sure we all know the names of those, and largely that's been due to the lack of appetite by the insurance market to compete in that sector, which has always been notoriously hard to break into. So instead, insurers became supporters of allied healthcare professionals and have, over the years, provided comprehensive and competitive arrangements for nurses in advanced roles, for primary care pharmacists, and more recently, as the NHS itself evolves, the new roles that are coming out, such as emergency care practitioners and physicians' associates. Insurers are very similar to defence organisations. They've become very adept at providing high quality cover with all of the expected extensions that a clinician would require. That would give the clinician comfort their cover is truly robust, but as an added advantage, insurers' policies are contracts, which are both enforceable at law and overseen by the Financial Conduct Authority. So in this respect, unlike defence organisations, insurers are regulated, and as part of this regulation, they're expected to hold sufficient claims reserves to meet the needs of their policyholders. Insurers can't exert discretion in their claims judgment either, and they provide a policy wording which gives certainty to the end client, the clinician, as to what they are specifically covered for. So, as April fast approaches, it represents a turning point for the indemnity market. The state will now pick up the indemnity responsibilities of clinicians delivering NHS contracts, and as a result, the market expects a narrowing of customer requirements to policies that cover just the peripheral indemnity needs. This means that GPs, particularly, will be given more choice over their indemnity provider as insurers seek to enter the market, and they'll be more willing now than ever to provide appropriate solutions to market demands. So there's probably that pressing question, which is, why have insurers decided that now is the right time to enter the market? And the answer to that lies in what customers want. The need for a comprehensive indemnity policy will no longer exist from April. Instead, customers want a dovetail product that works around what they're going to get from the state. And this means rather than insurers adapting to compete in the defence organisations arena, the opposite becomes true. Insurers, in fact, have an advantage. Insurers' overheads are actually not burdened with the need to maintain a legacy book of indemnity where claims obligations remain a drain on those business reserves. In spite of those defence organisations offloading that core business of GP indemnity, that GP cost still hits their balance sheet, and at the moment insurers do not have any of those financial burdens. In simple terms, the market should open up and it should become more competitive, and importantly, prices should be able to be driven downwards as commercial advantage is sought between providers, both defence organisations and insurers entering the market. Clearly, members are going to be historically loyal to a defence organisation, but when general practice is facing only a modest increase, that 1.4% that we previously highlighted in its global sum, and private work is increasingly scrutinised for appropriateness when it conflicts with NHS services, practices will be seeking more ways to cut costs, but importantly, not to cut quality, to improve their bottom line. Naturally, a purchase shouldn't be wholly driven by price. After all, as we've seen with price comparison websites, the best cover is rarely at the top of that list of results. Insurers are offering something different, however. They're offering some certainty. No longer will clinicians feel obliged to select from a choice of 3 what appear to be very similar organisations where cover is driven by the principle of discretion. At MIAB, like a lot of other insurance brokers out there, I'm sure we don't like discretion. We don't believe that it's fair, and this is a view which is supported by the government in a recent Department of Health and Social Care consultation into the regulation of indemnity. And if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend that you look on the Department of Health's website and look at their consultation paper. It's quite a lengthy document, but it does give some really good detail as to the pros and cons of a discretionary arrangement versus insurance. Specifically, they note, and I'll quote from the document, the risk that providers of discretionary indemnity may face a situation in which they do not hold sufficient financial resources to support healthcare professionals may be increased by an absence of appropriate regulatory oversight and transparency. Providers of discretionary indemnity, principally the MDOs, are not required to disclose their full financial position in their audited accounts in respect of such cover and are not subject to the same standards of reporting, disclosure and oversight by regulators such as the FCA and the PRA, unlike insurance companies. Regulated healthcare professionals may therefore have less assurance about the extent of their financial protection or, conversely, exposure, and patients and the public may have less certainty and confidence in the extent to which recourse is available. In one such example of how insurers are entering the market, MIAB has partnered with global legal insurance provider ARAG to offer an insurance solution which targets the very aspects of cover that we've just identified as being shortfalls under the state-backed scheme. First and foremost, we're looking to cover fitness to practice. That's the defence of GMC and regulatory disputes, and it's becoming increasingly popular as claims of negligence and incapability grow year on year. So we've recognised that it's essential that you have an avenue to secure the support that you need should you suffer a fitness to practice allegation. ARAG are also there to defend the clinician in the event of litigation arising from a Good Samaritan's Act. They'll pay attendance costs for coroner's courts proceedings, and significantly, they offer that all-important medico-legal helpline with 365 24/7 access. And because the policy is insurance-backed, you can rely upon that robust limit of indemnity of £100,000 to cover even the most expensive of legal proceedings. Most importantly, you can be sure that as long as the circumstances fall within the scope of the wording, the policy will respond. There's no ifs, there's no buts, just certainty. And of course, that's the thing that the government are saying at the moment is the downside with discretionary arrangements. We also recognise that customers will want different things from their cover, so we've developed a practice level policy which covers all of the GPs and, subject to application, the rest of the allied healthcare professional team. And that's enhanced further because we include cover for business issues like contract disputes, and what's more, our entry price is around 30% lower than that of one of the leading defence organisations for which we've seen initial indication quotes for comparable cover. One of the key shortfalls of state-backed indemnity is the lack of cover for private work, and GPs need to understand that this includes things like private travel vaccine clinics, private inoculations, writing medicals, writing reports, undertaking medicals, whether it's for insurance companies, whether it's for third parties. And for some practices, these private services can account for a significant chunk of the overall business income. So it's important that clinicians seek appropriate indemnity for these exposures. And more important still, that any indemnity solution that is sought doesn't cap the amount of income that the clinician can earn from the private clinics. MIAB have partnered with leading Lloyd's syndicate and healthcare specialist Beazley as well to provide a cost-effective solution to private indemnity requirements, with cover extended to include private report writing, Good Samaritan Act, compensation awards, private medicals, private travel vaccine clinics, the inoculations, and useful covers in addition to that for revalidation and court attendance. And as a real point of difference, our arrangement will include indemnity to principal. And if you're unfamiliar with the term, that's basically an extension of the cover that includes both the individual and the entity if both are named in litigation involving the insured member. And in this case, that insured member would be conducting private work, where litigation could also be directed back to the trading name. As a package, MIAB call this the Indemnity Essentials Suite, and it's designed to cover the legal and private work exposures that the state-backed scheme won't pick up. And in the event that a group practice wants to apply for this type of insurance, we will actually give a further 20% discount for the larger group applicants versus the already competitive pricing that we've referred to. Now, naturally, you're going to be a little bit worried about moving away from a defence organisation. After all, you've probably used the same medical defence organisation since qualifying as a GP. However, what's being requested by the BMA is a dovetail product that wraps around the state-backed indemnity scheme, and something far more mainstream and readily available in the insurance market than what's available from the medical defence organisations. Brokers are familiar with this type of insurance. We've been offering it for years, just in different sectors. So we're adept at providing these types of policies, but also at providing service to a standard that you would expect. Moreover, let's think about your practice as a whole. Let's think about your nurses, your pharmacists, your healthcare assistants, and the other allied healthcare professionals that sit within it. In the past, defence organisations have proved to be an expensive route to protect the non-GP staff, and yet under the state-backed indemnity scheme there'll be an increased requirement for these same staff to have all of the dovetail covers that are being demanded by the GPs. Don't forget, your allied healthcare professionals are more likely to be insured under contracts of insurance at the moment, where these covers, like defence organisations to GPs, are provided as standard, but you'll lose those covers when you switch to a state-backed solution. So MIAB stand ready to support practices as entities, to support their allied healthcare professionals with a practice-wide legal solution with fitness to practice and medico-legal support at its core. Clinicians will be able to apply individually, but most cost-effectively, the practice can apply as a group to protect those that matter most, including or excluding the GPs. The prices are flexible depending on exposure. There's no one-size-fits-all approach because in the evolving landscape of the NHS, we're recognising now that no one primary care business is the same as another. So thank you for listening, and I hope you found this short presentation informative. If you want to get in touch with me or one of my specialist team about any questions raised here, or you simply want to explore the MIAB solution to state-backed indemnity, contact me on the details on your screens now. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks again.